Hey, before we get into everything, gotta let you guys know once again about our sponsor. Love having them on board, Fort Scott Munitions. They're letting us do this and keeping us going. A manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact. That's their trademark. In soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in every state, all 50 states, as well as directly online through fortscottmunitions.com. That's FortScottmunitions.com. Use the exclusive promo code Battleline, one word, for 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of this podcast, the Battleline Podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud sponsor of Chris Paranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. And Chris, I know you've been using the product for years at this point.
Yeah, and for in layman terms, when we talk about being tightly wound, tightly spun, and you know, to me in the beginning it was all Greek. It's like, hey, does the round going to hit where it needs to go? Well, that's what that means. It means it's made as well. You're going to get a good spin on it when it comes out of the barrel. So you're going to have the same accuracy. Of course, take off the human element out of it, but mechanically you're going to have the same accuracy every shot. And that's what you want. You want consistency. And you're going to have that with Fort Scott Munitions. And I use those in all my Battleline training classes. Myself, Ben Morgan, swear by him. Ben Morgan's a first Ranger bat, triple canopy guy, has been downrange a few times himself. It's a tremendous ammo. But what I really love most of all about the company, and I've been around a lot now, a lot of companies being a quote unquote public figure. I hate being called that, but you got to live with what you are. That's what I am. You find companies that don't have the integrity. They don't say and do, what they say and what they do are completely different. And Fort Scott Munitions and the Kraft family and the Forrester family, which Robbie Forrester is the VP out there, they've done everything they've already said to do. They said they're going to do for me, their integrity. I never questioned it, and it was reflective in their product. Their product is tremendous. I think that goes hand in hand. I think I do believe that the corporations that have integrity within the corporation themselves are honest and are trustworthy. It reflects in their product, and that's definitely with Fort Scott Munitions, and that's why I've been with them since I found out about them, which was over 2.5 years ago. And
wow,
I'm still shooting their ammo daily, and when I go to the range, which I wish it was daily, I should say, whenever I go to the range, but also the training classes and hunters out there. Yeah, you've got to give their ammunition a really good shot. All their higher caliber ammunition, rifle ammunition, because you're going to be happy. And you go on YouTube and look at the Fort Scott Munition videos. So they have videos out there.
Yep,
of course,
I've seen them.
You definitely take a look at them if you don't believe me, and then just give a 20 rounds a shot, and I'm telling you what, you won't be disappointed at all.
Yeah, and I mean, we are coming right around to Christmas, so this is like that last minute gift idea. I mean, very last minute, so definitely check how long shipping will take. You can't quote me on if it'll get there before Christmas. That's up to them. But if you're able to get something in your area before Christmas, this is like a great last minute gift idea. FortScottMunitions.com. Promo code Battleline. With that, really excited to have on the podcast a guy I've known for a long time, Coriolanus. Let's get right into it.
On the microphones, pure and uncensored American straight talk. Never quit. You're locked and loaded with Chris Paranto and Ian Scotto. This is the Battleline Podcast.
Battleline Podcast, I have to say, tremendous response to the last episode in that I think I told you, Chris, the episode with Jack now has more plays than any other episode. And it's the newest episode. So as all of those have been accumulating plays, this thing already outperformed all of them. So I think it's safe to say.
That's great.
Yeah, we got to get Jack back on.
And Kate, did you tell Kate, though? I don't want to hurt her feelings. Is that okay with Kate?
I haven't mentioned it. I did write a Facebook post to let people know. I mean, it's everybody. Like, who's a bigger name, Andrei Arlovsky or Jack? Honestly, Andrei, but he was a UFC champion. But our audience just gravitates towards the special ops guys and those type of topics. And, we're going to do a lot of that and other things.
Yeah, we'll get more on. I'm happy with whoever. Ian, that's why I love you, because you track all that. Where with me, I'm like, okay, just tell me is it good or bad. And that's all I need. I just need the green. I just need it just black and white. Is it good or bad? Yeah, it's good. Okay, cool. You say it's good. But Jack and I have a rapport. I do believe that and coming from the same background from the 75th, I think people saw, and I do believe with the 75th Ranger Regiment, you see that our mentality within the regiment is different than other units. It's not. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying it's different. Is that we aren't going to blindly follow any allegiance to an organization or a department. And I even posted something like this, or a political party, just because we may vote one way or the other. We're going to use common sense and make good, sound judgments and opinions that way, instead of saying, hey, I'm a Republican, I believe this is how I have to stay, or I'm a Democrat, this is how I have to stay. No, it doesn't make a difference at all. What's common sense say? And that is the regiment, though. That's what the 75th. Everything always fell down to, is it make common sense to do it? If it doesn't, then don't do it. And if you violate that fifth principle, patrolling, which is common sense, then you know what? You are going to get probably your butt handed to you, and that's at the regiment. That's not anywhere else. That's in the regiment. So, and I think people saw that, and I liked hearing about Jack talk too, because Jack is articulate a lot more than me, and he comes across as a smart ranger, where I come across as a closet smart ranger. I'm pretty smart, but on the outside, of people come and talk to me like, God, that dude's an idiot. He can't even form a complete sentence, and he speaks too quickly. Well, that's coffee for you. I can't do nothing about you. I like coffee, so I can't do anything about that.
Well, I will say, I think you're both very smart guys. Like working with both of you, man. You know what I was surprised by is I really did expect to get a lot of hate for that from that episode, and at least so far, I haven't seen a whole lot. And I think it's because at the end of the day, we were fair. We didn't do the episode to bash anybody. We did it to give these are the facts. This is what we know. This is what we could speculate upon. And I honestly only read one thing that I would say was negative, and it was before the episode even went up. Jack posted about that it was going to, get people up in arms possibly. And some guy wrote, you sound like you don't know what the definition of alleged is. But the guy didn't listen to the episode yet. So I wrote some comment that was like, check out the full show in full context, and you may feel differently. But I didn't hear a lot of people bash us. Overall, it was a really positive response.
Well, that says a lot for people out there. And I say this to people when I talk to them just on the street, somebody I don't know. And this is me being lucky enough to be out there on the speaking circuit, and I get to speak to different groups. I get to speak to corporations or groups that you may have. They're different in their political ideologies, but when you talk to them and you talk to them about either combat or you talk to them about just black and white issues, and you don't bring your political influences into it, people actually do have a lot of common sense. People do make good decisions if you just point out, hey, we're not siding with Trump. We're not bashing Trump. We're not siding with Obama. We're not bashing Obama. This is just what it is. And when people actually can step out of that CNN versus Fox box for 2 seconds, if they realize, oh my gosh, we do have common sense. And I see it. Everybody has that common sense. They just have to be willing to step out of whatever paradigm they're believing in at the moment and just be what we really are. And that's smart, intelligent human beings that if we take all of our feelings that we've been manipulated by the media, and the media manipulates the hell out of us. Yep. I was part of that. I was right smack dab in the middle of it. I fell for it. When people step out of that, and it's like clarity. It's like, oh, wow. It's like you hear the angels singing. Oh, yeah. The clarity comes in, and people like, you know what, they do make good, sound decisions. And you're right, we didn't bash anybody, but that wasn't to bash anybody. That was to, hey, this is what we believe in. And both Jack and I have seen combat. We have been in situations where where you have don't shoot situations, or you have the opportunity because you have the ability, because you're in that position to take a life, even though it's not going to be the right thing to do, because it's not on an op. It doesn't matter. They may be a prisoner. There may be somebody coming in to give information. And we didn't do it because, again, human life is important. And I believe we could speak eloquently. At least Jack can speak eloquently. I speak in my choppy fashion. As people see, I'm all over the place. But we can speak intelligently about it because we haven't read it somewhere. We didn't hear it from some pundit. We actually been in those situations. And that's why I'm happy too. But I'll be honest, I agree with you. I'm a little bit surprised as well. But I'm pleasantly surprised, and that's better. I'm glad to say, you know what, I am pleasantly surprised. We haven't lost hope for society. We haven't lost hope for the United States of America, as everybody, the world's going to end. No, we still have good people everywhere. People just need to get out of that dang media-driven box every once in a while and go back to their roots, which is just thinking intelligently about subjects and using common sense.
Yeah, what I think a lot of people don't realize, and you and I were talking about it, and by the way, I don't blame the public for not really knowing this, because people are going about their everyday life. They have their job. They're not analyzing everything going on in the media. But you turn on Fox News, CNN, any of these stations, MSNBC, we were texting about it. A lot of these pundits who come on, they're part of, super PACs. Yeah, either for, this candidate or that candidate. And they're basically paid to give a certain view on things. It might not even be their real opinion. They're basically paid to make Trump look good or to make Hillary Clinton look good. And then they're going to debate the person on the other side who's paid to say certain things. And, the three of us, speaking of Jack being here, are not, paid by anyone. We have Fort Scott Munitions on board as a sponsor. They're definitely not telling us what to say and what not to say. So, we don't work for any candidate. We're not helping anyone get elected or not get elected. These are our genuine, this is our genuine perspective on the issue at hand. So even if you disagree, you can at least see it's coming from a real place. And
that's fine if they disagree. That's just our opinions. And that's what I always tell people. I take for what I have to say. And then at the end of the day, you can walk out of the room or turn off the podcast and say, God, that dude's an idiot. Or, damn, Tano, he's a jackass. I'm not listening. That's fine. I don't care. I don't care. That's fine. That's my opinion. That's your opinion. I want you to have that. But it is. I'm agree with you. And I want people to say, you know what, though? They're really not. They're not trying to push one way or the other. They're just saying what's on their mind. And hopefully, because of experience, because of not what we've read, not what we've seen in a sound bite, not that what we've seen in maybe an interview. And that's why I don't even watch the news anymore. That what they're saying is coming from something where they have actually been through the experience. I will always listen to somebody that has been through a similar experience, their view, because there are so many other things that go into a decision, especially when you're thinking combat or even taking your person's life or protecting an individual from harm. When you've done that and actually been through that experience, there's other feelings and emotions that come in, and you actually have that ability to replay that in your head. And what was I thinking? What was I feeling? What should I have done here? What should I have done differently? And you replay it in your head over and over and over again. So when somebody asks you about something like an Eddie Gallagher or a Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, you can say with some certainty, like, you know what? He was in the wrong here. You know what? Oh, no, wait. He did handle himself right, because I've been in that situation before. And whether you like it or not, and nobody can dispute that. And if people want to dispute that, well, I tell you, Ryan, you can go to hell on my end if you want to dispute that, because I have been in that situations, especially situations where I could have very easily taken a life of someone that I wasn't sure if it was a bad guy or not, or I wasn't in the situation where I needed to, and I didn't. And that's something that at least I can say with some certainty that I can say with some certainty that, yes, my opinion is valid because I have an experience in the matters that we talked about with the Lawrence and Eddie Gallagher and then Goldstein. So And I hope people got a little bit out of that. But bottom line, again, is that I still think people do out there have a lot of common sense. They just let the media push that one way or the other, where if they just would take a step out of that box, they would come back and realize, you know what, man, maybe I'm not thinking clearly here. Let me try this again, just with a blank slate where somebody isn't trying to influence my decision one way or the other.
Yep, I agree, man. Bottom line, turn off the TV once in a while.
Yeah.
So, and I should also say, in regards to like us getting all these plays this week, part of that is also your wife shooting out that email blast, which was, thanking people who either purchased something from the website or were a part of a Battleline tactical course, and just did something, that was a part of your life, and thanking them for that. So.
She's awesome, and my wife is awesome. She just put up with me, dude. I can't. And for those, full disclosure out there, guys, and I've said this to people, and I'm proud to say that we have reconciled. We've had our ups and downs, so we haven't been a perfect relationship within my military, my deployments. It crushes a relationship being deployed. It was so hard. So you youngsters out there listening, if you're married, just be prepared. You have to be strong, and there's going to be ups and downs because you are gone. I got married and went right to Ranger School. I got married.
Crazy.
We haven't even ever had a honeymoon. We got married at the courthouse in Tacoma, Washington in 2001, and the next week I was in Ranger School.
And yet you guys seem very compatible. It's not like you just married someone that you really don't click with.
I think that's why we've been able to get through a lot of the adversity that we've been through. Honestly, shit, brother, she should write her own book about relationships with her dealings with me. If any person out there, man or woman, knows how to endure through difficult relationship, it's her. And I think, again, when she writes anything, especially that thank you that she put out, I can't take credit for that. When she writes it, it's always from the heart too. She wears her heart on her sleeve, and I think it came across. Obviously, it was
genuine, and it also got some ears on the podcast, because there are some people who may have read the book but didn't know that we were doing this, and they're not on Facebook.
We need to have her on, brother. What can we do?
I'm in. Right now I have January booked. Let's do it February.
Well, she's not in any hurry. My wife could be an Instagram, Facebook gun buddy.
She's not on any of that though, right?
No, she hates it, and that is what I love about her too, because she doesn't need the attention. My attention is good enough. That's all she needs, and I love that about her, because she doesn't look for. And she does. My wife, for all you out there, guys, my wife has a rockin' body. For 3 kids, she looks like she's 20. And she played volleyball. She was an All-American volleyball player through college. So believe me, and volleyball girls do have nice butts from doing all the squats all the time. And she still asks me, "You don't need to say anything, Ian. You just keep quiet there." But no, having a beautiful wife like that doesn't seek the attention, even though she's a brand ambassador for Tadia, the athletic clothing company that I rep. They brought her on after I posted a couple pictures of her wearing some of the stuff.
And they were like, enough of you. Put her in this stuff.
Exactly. Well, look, go to my Facebook page and you'll see there's an ad they did for her and an ad they did for me. Oh yeah, she's 15,000 more hits than I am. I know. There's no contest. So she's a beautiful woman, but that's what I love about her too, is she's such a genuine person, and she's stronger and she is. She's tougher than a bag of hammers, dude. She's tougher than a bag of nails. She is so strong, and she has sincerity. And again, after 3 kids, she is just still just gorgeous, unbelievable, and she's very athletic, and that helps with the compatibility, definitely. But we need to have her on. We do need to have her.
I'm down. February, you guys heard it here first, man. So, emails. I've mentioned before, battlelinepodcast@gmail.com. We like answering any questions. I am getting blown up with a ton of guest suggestions. Some of them are great. We just have a lot of people that we both want to bring on, and it's hard to narrow it down to who we want each week.
Well, we'll get people. I mean, remember, we're hoping longevity on this thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we have years, hopefully, to get. So everybody out there, suggestions. Yeah, thank you for that. We're not dissing you. We're not blowing you off.
Not at all.
We just. Yeah, Ian's right. We have a ton that we need to get on. And one thing I've also learned, and Ian knows this from working with Will Cow as well, is when you get in the public world here, you're just not going to make everybody happy. And you just can't. I've tried to, but that's why I don't even answer a lot of my direct messages, if any, on Facebook or Instagram, because When I did, if I didn't answer one, I was an asshole. It's like, you answered him, but you didn't answer me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got 300,000 people. You feel like, what is it? Bruce Almighty.
I remember you mentioned that.
So I just like, you know what? I just quit answering them because it was damned if I do, damned if I didn't. And so people out there, we're not knocking, we're not ignoring you. It's just, it's hard to keep up with there. And we'll do our best to get everybody on that people want to hear. And also they have to want to come on our show too. They may not want to.
Yeah. No, but I think most people do, man. I mean, there's a ton of people. So anyway, I did want to get to this question. It actually originally happened on Twitter. Dave Eden on Twitter hit me up and he was like, at Ian Scotto, okay, after hearing you mention Five Finger Death Punch on Soft Rep and now Battleline, can you recommend a good album to start with? So what I let him know, and I just said, being entirely honest, I'm not the biggest fan of theirs. They're good. They're good. I'm just not a huge fan. So what I said is, I said Chris definitely is.
I got this, yeah.
So yeah, he wrote me an email and he said, as mentioned on Twitter, can Chris recommend the best Five Finger Death Punch album to start with?
You know, they really have all been very good. The very first one, and the very first one here. Well, this most recent one has been good. Let me here, because I got to find the title of it again.
As you're looking, let me just clarify though. No disrespect at all. I mean, like that song, "The Other Side of Heaven," is great. They have some good stuff. There's just certain bands that are constantly in rotation for me. They're just not in that for me. But I know for you love them. So
they're on my workout playlist. They're right again. My workout playlist is. I'm very eclectic. So right next to Five Finger Death Punch, we'll have Slipknot. Then Elton John will come on and George Michael, and then it'll pop over to who's my country singer, Darius Rucker. But then it'll pop back to Five Finger Death Punch. So yeah, the reason is they go back to like the AC/DC type songs, because there's that funkiness to them. If you listen to AC/DC is a great rock band, but if you listen to it, there's some blues in there. There is. They've got that. They've got that rhythm, and Slipknot does it when they slow some of their stuff down. So does Five Finger Death Punch when they do it. So, oh my gosh, dang it! And that's just why I'm just.
Are you
so many?
Are you stalling on giving this guy his favorite?
I'm going to, dude. I just got to find the name because I don't want to give him the wrong album because it was the second one they did.
It's funny you mentioned Slipknot, by the way. The new single Nero Forte.
That
great
is awesome.
Song, man.
Dude, that's a kick at. See, and that's funky.
And you know what I like about it too, man, is it's like it touches on stuff we've talked about in this podcast. I could feel it before I even heard him explain it, but Corey Taylor said that whole song is about, depression.
Yeah.
And the whole song, that line, you could do your worst to me, at the end of the day, that's what you do best. Like, I think anybody who's gone through that type of thing could really relate to that song.
And the way they put it out, that's old Slipknot. That's back from the old original days, like Iowa, and they brought, and that's good. I love that's on my album. Well, he said the second one where they got big on Five Finger Death Punch was The Wrong Side of Heaven and The Righteous Side of Hell, and they had two different. They had Volume 1, Volume 2. Those are awesome. Actually, to me, those are probably the best because I think they were the best made in the studio. You can hear it in the studio, the difference. The first one that I really started to get into them, though, was American Capitalist. And that's and they have good songs on American Capitalists. But, War's the Answer. I had a couple of them, but that wasn't my favorite. I really do think their best one up to date. Now, it's close, though, because the last one they've done, I want to say it's called, and I'm trying to remember, A Decade of Destruction. And they've got some new ones on there that Blue on Black is one of them. One of the songs they have, that's pretty good, man. And there's actually a song, if I could, I know I'll probably cut you off doing this. I'm going to find it, Ian. There's a song that actually, if you listen to it, I listened to it, and it describes my life for up till probably last year of how it was being in the public eye. And it's I got to find the name of it, but it's on their newest album.
Okay.
So check out Decade of Destruction, and Justice for None. Have them look at those two. Those are awesome. Justice for None is, I believe, I'm sorry, Justice for None.
It sounds to me like you like every album. You've pretty much mentioned every album in this answer.
I do. The Wrong Side of Heaven, Righteous Side of Hell, though, that is probably has the most songs that are the best to me. And then they brought Rob Halford on from
Judas Priest.
Judas Priest, when he played, and he was in one of those albums. That's when you got guys coming on like that are the old school rock guys. Judas Priest, you get guys from Iron Maiden coming on and helping. Now you've just validated yourself in my book that you actually have some class too, because you're repping the old guys. That was a big, and that was The Wrong Side of Heaven, Righteous Side of Hell. So that's my favorite. But Justice for None is getting close because they've got some great songs on there. So when I look at albums too, and I'm rambling a little bit, but when I look at albums, there's good songs on every album. So yes, I do like all the albums. There's a good, but do you have a song? And as we used to play, because you and I used to not be able to download just one song. You had to buy a whole album for one song.
I do remember that.
Remember?
Yep.
You want a song album that you can play straight through, that you don't have to hit the fast forward, because we used to have to hit the fast forward too, and you'd have to wait for it to spin because it was a tape. Right.
See, that's a little before my time. It's still CDs. Because I grew up like, late 90s was me, mid to late 90s was me getting into music. So
well, I'm dating myself then. But so when I listen to an album, I like all their stuff. I think Five Finger Death Punch is awesome. Just like Slipknot. I think Slipknot's fantastic as well. But when I say best album, it's an album. Can I play song one and not want to fast forward it the way to song whatever? And that was Wrong Side of Heaven, Righteous Side of Hell. Both volumes were awesome. That's like one of those albums that just like Slipknot when they had Iowa, and their next one, I kind of can't remember, that was even better. I used to listen to that in Iraq all the time, or AC/DC, Back in Black, or Metallica, the Black Album. Those albums only come along every once in a while, and that's what that is.
Yeah, there's very few albums where you could listen to the entire thing, but just this discussion is making me really excited for next episode with Pat McNamara, because Pat is as old school of a metalhead as it gets.
Dude, he still looks old metalhead, dude. He does, doesn't he?
He loves it though, man. He could talk metal day and night.
I do want to hear because I want to hear some of his stuff that he likes doing. Dude, there's some metal that. You know what? I'm trying.
He's a little bit more old school than you in that he's like Judas Priest, Metallica, Slayer, all that old school stuff.
They were awesome. Some of that stuff, I think I was more getting closer again because it has to be funky to me. And when that was going on, Def Leppard was funky. Their drummer, their bass player. I like Def Leppard. They were, and he'll say,
we're getting onto such a topic here, and I do want to get to Coriolanus. This makes me wonder. What do you think of this Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Poison, Joan Jett tour coming around, and Motley Crue saying they broke the contract that they weren't going to tour anymore?
Who? They're not?
So Motley Crue 5 years ago said they were done. They were hanging it up. They did their last tour. I went to 2 dates on that tour, and I'm sure they got a huge offer to tour with Def Leppard, and they've come out of retirement, and they're going to be playing arenas and stadiums this coming summer.
Wow, dude, that is epic. No, you got to go see that. How many times are you going to be able to see Motley Crue live? And again, there's another one. Dr. Feelgood. That's fun. Listen to it. It's funky. It's got
I have the Dr. Feelgood album tattooed on my back, right, Chris?
No, I didn't know.
I swear to you, yes.
That is that song. If that and Kickstart My Heart. Those don't get you pumped up. And I used to listen to those to get me pumped up before I go out on an op, or even before we used to compete when I was running. When I was doing a lot of running, like 10Ks, man, if your heart doesn't get going, especially with Kickstart My Heart, something's wrong with you. Those are two of the best songs ever made. Dr. Phil, and they're funky though. Listen, I mean, people maybe listen they're funky. They got some funk to them. They got some soul in them, and that's what makes them good.
I couldn't agree more. And you know what? I don't even know if you thought of this when you mentioned it when you were saying classic albums. You mentioned the Black Album and that both produced by Bob Rock. It says a lot for his production.
Yeah, the producers come in and they really knock it out of the park, man. And they do help. Rick Ross, when he gets involved with anything. Who was the guy that was with the Run DMC?
Oh,
you're Kid Rock, and he was awesome too.
Yeah, you're thinking of I'm forgetting. Rick Rubin. Rick
Rubin.
Yeah,
when he gets involved,
I know what you did. You confused him with Ross Robinson, who did all the old Korn and Limp Bizkit and Slipknot.
Sorry, Mr. Rubin. I admire you, brother. I've been listening to your stuff since I was a wee child on 8 tracks. When he started with Run DMC and got them going, and then part of LL Cool and helping with LL Cool J, and then he would jump to Eminem. But then he was also in Beastie Boys.
And he did Slayer. He did System of a Down. Yes. He did the Johnny Cash album with the cover of Hurt by 9 Inch Nails. I mean, that is an awesome resume right there.
And he brings funk in it. You can bring funk in anything, and it makes it better. Just add some funk to it. It'll make it better. It'll make it better. Anything you got to have, add some funk to it, and it will always sound better.
I fully agree. Well, I don't want to keep Coriolanus standing by too long, and it's so funny that I can't say his real name, but he goes by a code name, and it's Coriolanus. And also he could talk, so I want to let him come on, give him as much time as we can. But before we get to him, I do of course want to mention again Fort Scott Munitions. They're a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, as well as directly online through fortscottmunitions.com. Use the exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of this podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Paronto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. So joining us for the first time on Battleline Podcast actually is a guy that, if you've been a fan of like previous interviews I did or any of that people haven't heard from for 3 years, none other than Coriolanus, because I can't say your real name, expert on hacking and cybersecurity, all-source fusion intelligence analyst with almost 20 years of experience, including with the DoD, counterintelligence analysis, counterterrorism, joint targeting, and cyber information operations, Army and Navy veteran with experience working in Central and South America, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Southeast Asia. I think that covers it all. So glad to have you on, man.
Yeah, good to meet you finally, brother. Yeah, I mean, personally, I know your name, but it's good to finally meet you, man.
Hey, no worries. Thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor, Chris. I really, your whole story and as a character, it's definitely an honor to be on with you, and again with you, Ian. Wow, I didn't even know you had that much information on me, Ian. Maybe we should just get that summarized down.
Dude, you failed. You have failed as a counter spy IT tech guy. You have failed because there's too much out there on you. What are you doing, Ian? We got to find a new guest. We just lost all credibility right there.
I think Ian has collected all the little snippets that I gave to the folks that we worked with in the past, and then he put it all together now. So now it's like, geez.
Well, then Ian, maybe you have a new calling, brother. I think the CIA needs people anyway, and they need people that aren't complete pretentious assholes.
So go ahead over there. I should mention the way that this came about, bringing Coriolanus on, and I'm going to want to slip and say your name, and hopefully you don't, because you've done that before. I'll have to just call you brother, like Chris, calls everybody brother, and not say your name.
Bro. It's not bro. That's not bro.
The way I totally out myself. That is a thing.
You have, yeah. Terrible. So the way it came about, I should say, though, is that before we even recorded our first podcast, I was texting with Coriolanus, and I asked him if he checked out the Joe Rogan podcast with Edward Snowden. And your response was basically, fuck that guy. And I said, and I was like, hey, I'm working on a new podcast, by the way, with Chris Paronto. And your honest response to me, you were like, now that guy's a hero. That's a guy I would love to talk to. So I was enough said, we'll have you on anytime.
Yeah. I stand by that. I absolutely stand by both those statements. I think Chris did some amazing work. I don't know him personally, obviously, but from what I've read, what I've seen, and from other folks in the community that I've talked to, I think he's a great guy. Snowden can still go fuck himself. I don't give a fuck about that
See,
guy.
there we go. I like it. I like that. All right, you're good on my end there, brother. I know everybody don't like. There's a lot of people that don't like me, but that's cool. And by you coupling that with go F Edward Snowden, we're good. You're on my happy list. I'm gonna send you a Christmas card. I got to get it out today though, so it's not gonna make it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ian. Man,
No,
I'm monopolizing the conversation again.
No, this is all good. So, you know what's interesting is the last time, or one of the last times that we spoke, you really hit on something that the mainstream media didn't talk about until months later, where you said what was going on with the so-called Russia hack. You put it out there that you said they don't really care whether Trump got elected or Hillary got elected. It was all about creating discord among the American public and anything that was distrust in government. And sure enough, many months after you said that, they reported that Russia was buying ads for Black Lives Matter and all types of things that were not connected with Trump.
Yeah. No, I appreciate bringing that up. I'm not like a forecast or anything. I looked at, I've looked at Russia and China for about 7 or 8 years now, and I'm quite certain that they're kind of running a scorched earth policy when it comes to influence and information operations.
It's unbelievable that again it kind of segues back to what we are the segue into the conversation here is that you did math, you looked at past results, and you utilized common sense. I mean, just anybody with any common sense should have at least assumed that, and then you just validated it. I'm not that smart of a guy, and I could even see like, dude, they're just trying to, they're doing what we do. They're doing unconventional warfare. That's what they're doing. That's what we do in the SF community. We're trying to break them apart from the inside using misinformation, and with social media now, holy crap, it's so easy. So, and for people not to listen to what you had to say when you're the subject matter expert, that's just ridiculous. Or maybe they just, even like us, they knew you were right. They just didn't want to prove that. They want to show that you weren't right because they didn't want to give up any hands that they were playing. It's just ridiculous to me.
Well, I don't expect people to take my word for anything, to be honest. I tell people, and they can either choose to listen or not, whether it's, leaders who are in operational positions. It's not my job really to tell them to make a decision because I think something is, but I like, and like it gets into logical errors, like argument from authority, like maybe I'm not right, but you can ask 13 other people and a lot of them may agree, whatever. So, the funny thing is when you look at, speaking of Edward Snowden, I think that Edward Snowden provided a fairly raw kind of archetypal template for what Russia eventually developed doctrinally using General Gerasimov's doctrine. It's not really a doctrine. It's more a series of things that we've discovered as a result of that or since then. And they saw, like, as soon as Edward Snowden dropped all these leaks about the government, they saw the immediate distrust that the American public had in their government. And I'm not actually trying to convince anybody to trust their government. That's not what I'm trying to do. The opposite end of this argument is not trust your government wholeheartedly. But the difference is that Edward Snowden was deliberately trying to create a divisive environment. Well, he wasn't deliberately. He did create, whether it was wittingly or unwittingly, a divisive environment. I'm quite certain after he went over to Russia, it didn't take long for them to sit down at some kind of staff meeting or something and say, hey, that worked really well. One dude. I wonder what we can do. And then from there, basically, take a look at what they did. They've never stopped doing active measures, but take a look what they were doing with active measures and saying, hey, this has kind of been like a little bit backseat for I don't know how many years. Why don't we take it to the forefront a little further and start heavily investing into the following areas and see what happens in America? And then I think you can look at that and see what the result has been since then.
And I would like to know. Do you think that he? We're always giving opinions. Obviously, we're a show. It's opinions. It's nothing that we say can be said 100%, 110%, unless you're actually there watching it happen. But being him in Russia, and you said that unknowingly, unwittingly with Edward Snowden. Do you think though when he went to Russia, he helped them develop a plan? I mean, he's like, wow. I agree with you. I think, hey, he probably didn't know it was working, but then he sat down with the Russians, and he's already pissed off. Believe me, anybody that could get pissed off at the government, I know how that goes, and I know what's going through your head when that happens. But him sitting there with the Russians and then saying, okay, you know what? you may have not known you were doing this, but this worked a little bit. Let's make a game plan. Do you think he helped them strategize what they were doing now and what has come into now? And I mean, I'm just asking for your opinion. Yeah. I know you're not. It's not 110%, but I do want to know because you know more about this stuff than myself. I don't know a lot about this at all. I listen to a lot of what IT people. And I'm not trying to dumb it down at all, brother. What you do is very, very important. It gives us the ability to go out and do stuff on the ground. But I would like to know your opinion on that. And if so, because I disrespect the man. I have no respect for Edward Snowden at all. And that's always weighed in my head. It's like, we're not looking at the bigger picture. Did he help strategize? Did he help build what the Russians are using now? And to me, that's even more treasonous than what he was thought of doing before. So I just want to get your take on that.
Look, I'll point you. I look at it in this way, and we a lot of times I think maybe Chris and I or others who are in the DoD, we think about like, the joint planning groups or even like the tactical planning meetings where you sit down and you're going to go through like, you're writing a warrant order or an op order or whatever it is. And we think that that's like that's a directed effort. And then in espionage in general, not everything is that way. So you can just like you can have plenty of unwitting agents, people who are working for a foreign intelligence service, and they don't even know it. Now, whether Edward Snowden was witting or unwitting, and whether he was like sitting down in that directed fashion that we imagine where he was helping, I don't necessarily think so. I think he was part of a broader kind of pawn effort by Russia. I do know that with that said, I'll caveat that the first job that they gave him was a position at VK at VKontakte, which is the Russian social media site where white supremacists flourish like garden flowers.
Wow.
So like they put him, I think, either as the one of the senior VPs or something there, paid him a salary, and what do you take somebody like that and you put them in a social media company that is really, we look at social media companies now and we kind of get, hey, these are propaganda machines.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much, Russians already knew that this was a propaganda machine for them and how effective, he could be sitting there working for them in that respect. So I won't go so far as to sit there and say that he was sitting with some uniformed individuals and making planning or anything discretionary in that respect. But I will also say that as part of the agreement for safety, I doubt that he traded nothing. I think he traded much more than what has been disclosed so far. Otherwise, what would be the point of keeping him there?
Yeah.
There's no reason Russia would need to keep him or keep him safe. They were like, this is an excess cost. This is too much attention, and we don't really care about you. Other than you did some fantastic job wrecking the trust that Americans had in their government, what was left of it, at least. So, that's the real question. And the degree of which, I don't really know. I will tell you this also, not everything he took has been released, period.
Jeez.
There's a lot more that has not been released, just based, even if you look at publicly what was disclosed in terms of the numbers they throw around of what he took. If what he took is X, and they've released that in WikiLeaks and a couple other news pieces, then you have to assume that there's still, 3/4 of it still floating around somewhere, and he definitely has it or access to it.
Well, do you think would someone like that, or even you can always use yourself in this example. I don't think you're Edward Snowden at all, believe me. But I mean, that's how I look at things. Even like with our last episode where we talked about Eddie Gallagher and Lieutenant Clint or Anselm. I'm looking at from my perspective because I've been in those situations before, or I've been at a chance to make those same sort of decisions or not decisions that would have been made. But do you think he's holding on to him? You think he's waiting for something else to happen and he's just going to give him out, or what would it benefit him just to have him just in case another administration comes after him and says, hey, you're going to prison for life. I'm like, well, wait a second, I still got this and this and this. I'm not sure if you want to do that.
It's not even. I'm not sure that he is too terrified of the legal consequences of what he does. You got to remember, he's pretty much a narcissist.
Okay.
He actively wanted to make change in the world in the way that he saw fit, not in the way that we think is the best way necessarily. So like he didn't have a discussion, it wasn't a staff meeting to decide how to change. He just took it upon himself. That's narcissistic behavior. But But outside of that, he's basically got a insurance policy so that if he dies, the lot or some or whatever of that will be released to certain people for them to publish, and that's basically what it's for. Now, the legal consequences, he's never getting out of that. I mean, we're not going to necessarily extrajudicially extract him from Russia in some respect, because that would basically impair the investigation inside the United States. Like, if you want to nail this guy to the wall, the worst thing you do is illegally remove him from another country to bring him to ours. That would not help your case necessarily, even though, yes, we've done it before. So, I mean, I don't think, I think it's a matter of time. And when he does go to jail, he will go to jail for a very long time. And honestly, my personal opinion is they pursue the death penalty. I don't think he'll get it. I don't, like, when you look at like government trials like this, there's never the cases. I think the last ones were Adel, the Rosenbergs, the Edith and what's his face Rosenbergs, who were communists.
Yeah.
So I think he'll get like life in prison. And if that's the case, fine, so be it. But at least, you know, he's not running around, and he's still running around.
It's interesting. I was going to say it's interesting, man, because I did listen to that whole Joe Rogan interview. And I mean, what he presents himself as is he's just this guy who wanted to wake the public up that the government was wiretapping our phones, listening to our private phone calls, and that he wanted to show that there was proof of this happening. And that's at least what he portrayed on that podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's cool and all. Except that since then, The Intercept has published about, 50 to 100 different articles about how, like, our specific technological capability as it relates to leaks derived from WikiLeaks, or specific articles that were unrelated to U.S. persons and the surveillance of U.S. persons. And so the question really becomes is if this was a giant effort simply to first mobilize the United States citizenry against its government, and then, you know, further expose those technological like advancements that we use as part of, you know, our national security strategy to foreign intelligence services using open source information, basically using the media as a weapon against the United States. And if that's the case, well, that's worked pretty fucking effectively.
Yeah, that's what we talk about whenever we get on the first, me and Ian, before the guest comes on, is that we talk about that and how we tell people, turn the media off. The media has become a propaganda tool, and it has been overseas. I saw it when I was overseas with Al Jazeera and some of the other stuff was going on, but it's even become now here. It's become that way here now. And, tracing it all back, if you want to say the forefather of that was this guy right here, was Snowden. And I remember when he first came out, all those guys downrange were pissed. They're like, oh my God, you're putting our lives in danger, because now you're giving the enemy the ability to see what we're doing on a daily basis. And that, believe me, there was more than one guy that wanted to take his head. And I was one of them, because we want to get home. I just want to go home and see my family. And now you're actively trying to get us killed, is what you're trying to do.
That's what inevitably the result of that is like, speaking without attributing this to a single or group of people, but having spoken with the community and a number of people within the intelligence community, like the sum total of what he has set us back for about 20 years. And we can no longer assume that specific sites, locations, or operations are operating under clandestine cover, period. End of story.
Yeah.
And that's not like the key score crap that he revealed and all the other things, even though that was damaging. That's the sum total of what has not even been disclosed, but somebody has. Like, we have to make the assumption that it's been disclosed to someone other than him. We can't make the assumption, he's holding on to it. He probably isn't. And if you ask me why he's sitting in Russia, it's because he's probably just feeding little tidbits to them, which means for the next 20 or 25 years, it's likely that we are exposed, that our special forces, that our special operations forces, everybody is exposed to some extent. And I think you can see some of that manifesting, respectively, like more recently with like how GPS is being targeted by the Russians very specifically for a number of reasons. And before, there wasn't really, too much worry about, like, are the Russians hitting GPS or not? We just inherently trust it. We didn't see any efforts against it. And then the past 4 years, all of a sudden, wow, that's amazing. They suddenly have decided to take a look at GPS and completely undermine it in every way that we use it. So And you wonder what the correlation is, but you have to think of how much of our military or our intelligence infrastructure is based on things like, time date stamps, locational positioning, targeting, where, for instance, our units are, Blue Force Locator. All of those things, GPS, that's where that comes from. And so that's like a linchpin to our entire joint strategy. That guy, I hate that guy.
And to put it simply, he's just an asshole. That mother, that son of a bitch. It's you wanted to. I get being wanting to tell the truth and your government's doing something wrong. I was there. I get it. I would be a hypocrite to say that son of a bitch. When your government's doing something wrong, and if they even were there, but I also, you have to be respectful, you have to be responsible. That's why even when people read 13 hours, there's nothing OPSEC in there. We're not giving anything, because if we do, we still have friends that are working. It could kill them downrange. I don't give anything OPSEC when I talk. Yes, I'm angry, but there still is a responsibility as an American citizen at working for your government, even whether you trust it or not. You signed up for it. You're working for them. You still have that responsibility to keep America safe and to keep others, especially on a personal level. And I'm going to get grandiose, but on a personal level, keeping the guys you work with and those that are going to be doing the jobs, and maybe even my son when he gets that age, they need to be safe downrange. And he didn't. He basically said, the narcissist comment's perfect. He basically said, F everyone. I'm the most important person out here. I'm doing the right thing. I'm Batman. I'm going to take care of Gotham City and get everybody. And that's bullshit. And that pisses me. Yeah. The dude needs to be strung up by his fingernails for a long time.
He and others like him all had a path using the United States Inspector General, an entity I'm very familiar with, to take a whistleblower route, which is a very specific set of steps. Now, people like to dismiss this, and that's the thing. Just because you dismiss it doesn't mean it's not there. It's there. And so at the end of the day, like there was a path for them to do this, and that path, you had to show demonstrable evidence of fraud, waste, and abuse, or that the United States government was doing something illegally. And that the whole point behind that path is actually to give the government the opportunity to rebut. It's not actually to secretly assassinate you or throw you in jail. That's not what whistleblower is for. It's so that you get a situation like Edward Snowden, where just like you said, he wants to be Batman, change the world, all that. So the government has to act as the accused in that case, and thus rebut. So they go through a process, and now, mind you, they have a lot of weight, a lot of power. They can make your life a living hell. So, and people in the IG program will warn you, when you do this, your career is probably in that, whether it's in that specific field or whether it's in the intel community writ large, is probably over, because no matter what you do, people are going to hear about it, and as a result, you probably will be, whether it's like implicit or not, you'll be blacklisted. But the thing is, if you feel strongly enough, isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth your career? Isn't it worth it to put your, if you did this and you were successful, you could always, there are plenty of, like, given his skills, that he was an IT admin guy with some intel muckety-muck stuff in there. But at the end of the day, isn't it worth, you can take your admin skills and go work in the commercial sector, and you don't have to worry about you have to worry about your NDA, but you don't have to worry about NDAs with your new employer. So I feel like that was a lot better choice, given the fact that now you're sitting in Moscow for the rest of your life trying to avoid the United States government from throwing you in prison. There was an alternative, and there has been alternatives, and they choose not to use them. And even Reality Winner, or what the heck was the 98 Bravo kid who disclosed everything?
No, that wasn't Chelsea.
Chelsea Manning. Thank you, Chelsea. Manning. They all had whistleblower routes they could have taken and said, "Hey, look, this is something that I think is wrong," and they chose not to take it. Or, and I'll give them the credit, they weren't aware of it. But I don't really buy that as much. So are these guys? Is that narcissism a part of the trait that falls in with Manning or Snowden? It's because they want to.
Because you're right, there is a right way to do it. We did it the right way. We got a lawyer. We actually took it to the agency. We said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." I mean, they still suspended our clearances anyway. But we wanted to make sure, we're doing this the right way. And so if a book or a movie comes or anything, we're not going to get hemmed up at the end. But to show also in good faith that, you know what, guys, we're giving you the opportunity to tell the world the truth. You can if you want. But if not, we're going to. But we're also going to do it, and we're going to fall in line with whatever rules you have set up for us. And here's our clearance lawyer that is going to handle it. And
exactly. And I heard you say the exact word, and this happens just about every time. What the government will do almost immediately in those situations is suspend your clearance. It does that. It does that with anybody. It doesn't matter if there's a risk, and that's the government's purview. They will suspend it. It doesn't mean it's gone. It doesn't mean that you're now like PNG. You're not.
PNG.
You're just suspended. They do the investigation and they can reinstall it. So it's not like it's completely gone. And the thing is, that would happen with him, or it would happen with me, or with anybody else who stood up and said, "Hey, I suspect that the government is guilty of whatever, blah blah blah, fraud, waste, and abuse, or violating U.S. law, or whatever." They would do that immediately with me as well. So you're right about that. And the end of that doesn't mean that that's the end of your career necessarily, or even that you lose the clearance. You may lose your position or ability to work by virtue of like social pariah, but you may not have a clearance suspension forever, or you may not be able to not work for the IC forever. So I think, and you did the right thing. You went and got a lawyer, and that is the right step. And admittedly, all these are hard processes. Like I had to find a lawyer to help with my issue. And I had at least 5 lawyers just hang up on me because they thought I was.
They're like, to hell with this. I'm not. You do. There's a spec. You have to find this guy that specializes in that. And I told this on the last show. It's kind of ironic that our lawyer, and I like him. I don't care about his political views. Mark is a friend. He just politically, I think he's got a little bit crazy on the TDS syndrome there. But Mark Zaid was our lawyer. Mark represents the whistleblower that's part of this whole, that is the head, which is the one that's doing this Ukraine stuff right now. I don't know who, and I don't really care who the whistleblower is. I don't want the name. But that's what's funny is that Mark helped us. But in the essence, and our story really helped. I do believe, in whether Trump wants to believe it or not, I really believe that our story helped him get into the office. But now Mark's representing someone else that's trying to get Trump out of there. And to me, it doesn't make us, again, don't take a side, just find and do the right thing with whoever that person is. And Mark specializes in clearances. So that's why we got him. And I think he did a good job. My peers might disagree, but I think he handled our situation very well, because it could have went south for us very easily. And it did. But you're right, did the right thing, where if these assholes like Manning and Snowden, that's all they had to do. And then they just had to go through the process.
Well, and you brought up a very good point, perspective. Now with the exposition of that guy's name out there, that actually has diminished the set of rules and guidelines that could otherwise be used by other people who are trying to do the right thing. And it's really hard to do, because it just takes one person in the IC to say, oh, this person, he's definitely trying to like upset and rock the boat. So they'll immediately like expose that to like your senior leadership and all this, when all you were doing was asking a question. Like, what if, And so all of a sudden, you find you look in the newspaper and you're like, whoa, I didn't do any of that. Now, I don't know the exact circumstances of the whistleblower respective to Donald Trump and my own political like opinion respective. I don't really care, but I can tell you, when something like that happens, it would diminish something like, in your case, like your ability to go through that process and not have some kind of guarantee that there would be like some protections for you.
Yeah, you're going to get it's going to get slanted when human beings are human, and damn, everybody's so effing political nowadays that it didn't matter who you want to talk to. And that's I don't think we got treated fairly by Brennan because of what his political views were. But that's the nature of it, man. We knew what we were getting into. But I completely agree with you. As much to say it's going to be fair and balanced, you're going to get fair treatment. Bullshit. I know. No. If my story doesn't help who you like, your political views, you ain't helping me for shit. As much as you like to say you ain't helping me for anything. So
I've never gotten the impression ever in part of an investigatory process ever, whether it's like me on the defending side, immediately becomes a competitive thing, and I never get to anything. If you're the subject of it, nobody has your interests at heart. It immediately becomes this massive thing about like, is this a state thing, like a nation state thing, or is this like a not? Is this like did they break the law, and how does this affect us 20 years? Your little problem, like the fact that you're being accused of something, and no one cares. No one cares. The fact that this is ruining your family and ruining your income, that you're like being like dragged to not the defense, not the prosecution. No one cares really at the end of it. And so you're just sitting here like basically like in the game of Pong between these two massive runners. This is why I try to avoid that's why I have generally avoided working with law enforcement, and why I try to avoid the American legal system as much as possible.
Oh my Lord! Yep.
The end result is you get put in this meat grinder of humanity, and it's worse in other countries, but at least it's expeditious.
Yeah, oh my Lord, I got a story with that. Because you are not getting you're getting no objectivity. That judge, sorry, they're not. You want the case to be thrown out before it even gets to a judge, because rule of law, my ass. Constitution, my ass. What do I feel like doing today? Oh, I'm angry today. You're getting what we call the RI treatment, the ranger instructor treatment, when you're walking the lane. You may be getting everything right, but if that RI, he got dumped this morning, guess what? You're not passing that lane. You're a no-go, regardless if you dare. Well, same with the judge. I am in complete agreement. Gosh, I had a judge that ruled against me on a civil case that it was bottom line. If he would have read on, and it's long, so I'm not even going to get into it, but it was more lines of a contract. Well, I looked at a contract, so now it's enforceable. Well, by saying that means if every credit card bill that I get in the mail, as soon as I open it and read it, now they can enforce that credit card to me because I read it, because now it's a legitimate document. It's just crazy. The subjectivity in human nature, and I'm in complete agreement with you. It's there. The objectivity, it's not anymore. And you're right. I completely agree with you. You can't take that chance doing that. But thank you, Mr. Edward Snowden, for making that happen for everybody else down after him. I really appreciate it.
Well, I mean, I'm honestly, I did not come on the show just to like dump on him. But, man,
sorry, my bad. That's my fault.
No, technically it's me, because I just brought it up as the intro for how
you're the stick.
How this came about. But you know what I did want to ask you about that's really connected with all of this is, there's a lot of talk about how this is, Russia and all that, and how it's going to affect the next election. Do you have any, predictions on the next election and where things are going?
Yeah, I mean, I got my thoughts. Again, my thoughts do not reflect my employer. Et cetera. So
that's why you're anonymous, man.
Yeah, that's a good thing that I stayed as Coriolanus, right? I've actually been working. My company has been working with another German company, and the lady who runs this company, she's pretty smart, and what she's trying to do is grow it in a startup, and I'm sure she's working furiously right now to make it grow, because she's the CEO and she also helped develop the machine learning that drives it. But what we're looking at cohesively, and what I like about working with her, is I get a view into Europe and what's occurring in Europe, which Europe has kind of always been to some extent a bellwether. Their reflexive way of handling things is much different than the United States. There's a reason we're called cowboys. And I don't have a problem with it, I'll be honest. But Europe is certainly not. So like when I look at what she's doing, what she has been doing has been kind of in the advent of elections in Germany. But because she sits over there, she's also looking at the effects of what is occurring over here in Europe. And one of the things that she said when she came over here, she's like, what the heck is with the news? It's nonstop Trump. It's Trump this, Trump that, Trump this, Trump that. Like, there are other things happening in the world, and I'm like, yes, this is true, but unfortunately, welcome to the navel-gazing community of.
Yeah, could I just throw out there? I mean, when I look at the top podcast in the government category, which we're in now, all the podcasts surrounding us are about, impeachment and Trump. We're like the only place where we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, and honestly, I do not want to talk about that.
No. We are not getting involved with any of that BS except to make fun of it and parody it every once in a while. That's it.
That's the way I see it. And to be clear, I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump. I've never have been. Even when he wasn't president, the guy just irritated me. He strikes me as extremely. You have to understand, and Ian can attest to this. He strikes me as very New York.
Oh yeah.
And with all apologies to New Yorkers, if you're not a New Yorker, you just grate on everybody's nerves.
True.
I mean, and I mean that in the nicest way. Like, you go to New York, and New Yorkers have a lot of solidarity. They're together in it to get, everybody works together to kind of make their world better. And their world really is New York.
New York, yeah.
And I have no issues with that, but like. For instance, I had a small discussion with like two construction workers who came down to Tampa apparently for like paving, and they were like, "Dude, it's like the Wild Wild West down where you're at." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I kind of like it that way because nobody gets in your crap."
Yeah.
So they were just blown away by the amount. Like, they were having cigarettes in a bar. They're like, you can smoke here, and I was like, not everywhere, but yeah, some places it's a choice thing. I mean, you can go down the street and there will not be any smoking. And they're like, no, this is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But they were from New York, and they were proud of being from New York. But at the same time, they're like, I want to move down here. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, do your thing, and can I bum a cigarette? So I mean, like he's always annoyed me in that respect because he has the same characteristics, and which is funny because I doubt his city actually supports him as a constituency.
Oh no.
But I mean, personality wise and like his upbringing wise is like a New York elite through and through, and that just irritates me. So I can't say it's because he was president. He's just always irritated me. He strikes me very much kind of like Edward Snowden as a narcissist. And many politicians that are narcissists too. It's politicians as a vocation. A good friend of mine directed me toward Max Weber's old piece. So again, pointing out, I do not like the guy, but by the same token, I mean, all you see is news article after news article after news article. I have a good friend. I believe Ian's going to have on next week or down the line.
Oh, yeah, next month. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and he tried his hand very, very hard at journalism and was rejected a number of times simply because he couldn't tie the value of his article, which had a lot of value in and of it. It stood on its own. It was well written, the in-depth piece, and he couldn't get anywhere because it didn't tie into Donald Trump in some way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's terrible. Like, that's not the journalism or reporting that I expect from, like the Fifth Estate kind of thing from a public trust perspective. I expect it that you're going to, and if you look at the Society for Professional Journalism, they have basically a series of mantras and ethical things that they outline, and one of them is like try to find the objective truth, try to tell as many sides of that story as you can. And if the side of the story, for instance, of the ambush in Niger is to tie it to Donald Trump somehow, I'm pretty sure that's actually not too much of a side there.
Yeah. Jeez.
I believe it is like soldiers were operating under the command of the commander-in-chief, blah, 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 and I think that's about it. Those are the kinds of things that when she comes over here and she sees that, she's like, this is ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And I have a problem with that because I do work with journalists because I am a very big promoter for transparency. I don't work with journalists in the same sense that Edward Snowden does. I work with my company as a means to increase transparency. I look for things like liberation text so that people like in Venezuela who might be denied accurate or even just reporting in general can get an eye on what people see about their country, which you'll note is nowhere in the news right now. So I try to promote the broader distribution of stories that are basically about humanity in some respects, or about like totalitarianism, authoritarianism in a way, such that people are able to see and read what it really is. So I just, when she sees that and she's just walking in through the door, she's like, because she goes back home. She lives in Germany. It tells me objectively, someone who does not watch American news, who watches Deutsche Welle and watches all the other ones, basically telling me your news sucks because all it does is revolve around President Trump. So regardless of the side of the political spectrum that you're on, it strikes me as, there's a problem here. And whether not a fan. But I really would like to see more news coverage about international events. I'd like to see more news coverage about like just basic local events inside the United States, because local news stations are dying. They're just collapsing left and right. So as far as all of these things are concerned, I just see that they are not doing their kind of due diligence and their kind of duty to their public or to their audience. And there are, like, quite frankly, I see, and I think a friend of mine, Chris, actually mentioned, I do think that the media is a significant threat. I don't mean that in the First Amendment freedom of speech way. I mean that in the sense that they aren't actually doing their job. And when we talk about media, we're talking about corporate entities. We're talking like CNN is not a raggedy bunch of reporters out there who are like struggling to get the truth out. It's a giant corporate behemoth.
Oh yeah, they're run by, who is a shirts Time. They're both Fox and CNN both have shareholders that are in Time Warner and Disney. I mean, they're the same. That's why I tell people, like, dude, they're feeding off each other to make money, but they both work for the same people. Yeah. If people don't get that, like, that's why I don't watch it, because you're getting that shit. You're getting the fighting, and the fighting is planned to be fighting. Yeah. There are some people that have political views left or right. I get it, but really, it is the shows are made to show that conflict, because guess what conflict does? That makes money. That gives followers. That's what we want to see. It's just so. Again. Common sense.
You know what was the craziest thing that I saw relatively recently, and I know that you know about this, Coriolanus, because I can't say your real name, was how ridiculous was the reporting during the Joker movie of media outlet after media outlet saying there may be a mass shooting at a Joker premiere. We're anticipating that it's going to happen, and nothing happened. They were like, we're getting sources on the dark web of white supremacists shooting up the Joker premiere, and it never. And when you report that, it makes these people want to actually act on that. You're inciting violence.
Yeah, that's propaganda. I know I'm putting my 2 cents in before you jump on it, but that's what I'm talking about with the propaganda. That's where the media is dangerous, and that's where I agree that it's not the First or Second Amendment that we're worried about that the media is going to hurt. It's actually there's going to be some physical things going on because of the propaganda tool that drives people to the hatred, where they do end up starting to shoot each other, kill each other. Wars. That's how wars are started. That's how they're continually maintained. Go look at the Iraqi regime when Saddam was there. Go look in Libya. Go look in Syria. That's who controlled the dictators does.
In summers, like I would be careful. Personally, I mean, it's okay to generalize. And we're having conversations, but state-sponsored propaganda is one thing, and then you have media-level propaganda. And propaganda is usually state-sponsored. It isn't always. I have somebody else you can talk to who's an expert on this, but it isn't always. But insofar as what you're seeing, I think the Joker movie was supposed to be incels, and incels are definitely a consideration. And more. Yeah. So
keep going. I'm loving it.
I think. I'm just thinking. Like, I am now starting to dip my toe into working with some federal law enforcement folks, and oh my God, cognitively, it's pretty overwhelming. It's one thing where you're just like, okay, I know the traditional troop of, a-holes that are across the world that are definitely trying to undermine the United States, but now I got to fixate on the inside of America. And then you're like, holy cow, this is a whole another clown car. It's amazing. Wow. It is. It really is. I was just unaware of how many people inside this country are spending their time, like daily, I guess, on the bathroom, contemplating how, like, totally screw with the United States. And so I think from a propaganda standpoint, that what happens is you get a lot of times journalists, again, we have this perception of journalists as someone who is fairly well educated. And even if you look at most journalists, they'll have like masters from Columbia, et cetera, Columbia School of Excellence for Journalism. But what happened, and they probably are to some extent, and then they walk into the pipeline of, contemporary corporate media, and they have 3 or 4 fact checkers, one quote unquote hacker, and about 2 editors, and that's who they're sitting in a room with. They've got a quota that they've got to meet. So they jump on the first thing they can, or they'll walk over to their hacker friend and be like, hey, what's happening on the dark web? And the hacker might or may not have a very in-depth amount of knowledge about this, but it does not have the time to explain to someone who has a quota exactly what the incel movement is, or, why white supremacists have moved from Iron March and Tor to another, anonymous network. That's not that important to that reporter. What's important is that they get that quota met and that the story goes out, and that what bleeds leads. So the depth of what you're going to get is very low. And the last thing that reporter does before they've typed up their 3 pages or on the blog post, or it's in WordPress and gets submitted through a series of editors. So it's like 2 or 3 editors who check for grammar, spelling, etc. And then it gets posted. And that's it. That reporter may not have even left the newsroom. Yeah, and you guys had Jack on whenever you on. You should just ask him how many foreign press bureaus there are. We used to have foreign press bureaus everywhere in this world. Like there used to be a foreign press bureau in China, Russia. There used to be one in India. So we used to have like components of our news agencies in these locations where reporters would do work, and they're gone. They don't exist because of budgetary collapse. Like they're literally losing so much money, they can no longer afford to staff those people. And so what they'll do is they'll take Associated Press. There used to be one called UPI, which is now dead.
Yeah, UPI's dead. I didn't know that. UPI's dead.
Sure, I'm pretty sure.
No idea.
Yeah, either got bought or is gone. I could be wrong. And the Associated Press is just a bunch of freelancers sitting in that country with like press credentials. Like they could have a high school education for all you know. And they got the press credentials, and they're on site. They took some pictures, they wrote up a brief thing, and then they could send that to CNN, and that's what CNN reports. So the whole system and the way that things are reported within the media it's kind of just broken. And what I really want is for these things to collapse. That's why I don't watch them. I just want them, because they're money-making machines, I refuse to give them any money and as little money as possible.
You're speaking to the choir on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. What I really hope is that something good arises from the ashes. Like something that maybe is like, there are 2 places right now that I look. One that's called Newsy. They claim to be objective, and it's... I would say better than most. And then the other one is something called Civil. Civil is actually driven by blockchain, and it's kind of rising out of nothing. But they basically are I would say an organization, and it's not a corporation, that basically gives a seal of approval for specific independent news outlets. Now, I'm not saying like everything in today's age is called the bluing of America. Everything is kind of moving liberal in the United States. And probably one big reason is because this country hasn't actually had a war that anyone has to suffer for other than the amount of soldiers that are in it. And as a result, you're seeing a bluing. And that bluing is going to continue more than likely. And I'm not advocating for a war or anything.
We are not advocating for a war on Battleline Podcast. Let me put that out there right now. We are not. Believe me, people.
By all definitions, I am a warmonger. Like my life has been basically an effort at studying the nature of war, both empirically and being there. Everything that I've done has been war related. And for me, personal opinion, war is part of the human process. It's not nice. And there are plenty of human processes that are not nice. Getting born is not nice. Dying is not nice. War is not nice. Like there's plenty of human processes that are not fun that we all share. And war is one of those. And so I have spent a lot of time like looking at like things called war cycles and all kinds of fun things. But at the end of the day, when you look at the effects of war, and there have been some studies, Peter Turchik over in Russia and a couple others, there are some small positives to derive from that. One of which is usually after a war, you see an amazing amount of industrial and economic growth.
Yeah.
And two, you see cultural shifts, normative cultural shifts across the board, like in what a population believes. Now, this country hasn't really, I mean, we've been at war theoretically for like 10 to 15 years, but it hasn't impacted the denizens of the United States in a way that they can readily quantify for themselves, meaning they aren't donating metal. They aren't, there's no like war bonds. And like people wonder why the economy isn't doing that great. You got to wonder, like, 10 years of counterterrorism efforts in 20 different nations, and then you look at OCO funding, you look at all kinds of things, and you wonder, hey, how much of our economy are we divesting essentially into just Department of Defense efforts across the board? So they don't. There's no way for them to reach from, hey, I got to go to work today, to holy crap, we're spending so much money in these wars that we're not winning that it's affecting our economy. Like, it's a war. It's what they call a war chest economy, and that's not really good for democracy at the end of the day. Some people would say it is, but it's not. That's why I say that. I'm not advocating for a war here in this country, other than to say that the bluing is as a result of that there has been no austerity. And somebody once mentioned like final stage or last stage capitalism, which is really just a socialist communist thing. But the fact that you can sit in your house and order everything that you need from your groceries to a car to movies, that is an example of how, like, this economy has shifted into, and we're in this first world where no one has, like, is really in austerity. That's my opinion. But as far as the liberalization and the bluing, you're never gonna get that out of media, because millennials, and I'm not necessarily talking. Ian, are you a millennial? I don't think you're a millennial.
I'll talk shit about millennials all day.
What's so funny? I hate that term. I hate that term, but I think I technically am. I was born in '86.
Yeah, I think you are. You are just on the cusp of, like, yeah. So. And there's like Z and there's now Z generation. The point being is really within that is that austerity. There's never been a face for austerity, and what you see semantically is that liberals are looking for progression, social progression, in the vacuum of austerity. Meaning they've got it pretty good by people who've lived since 1945, or even 1960, or even 80. 80 is when you really saw, like, hyper-capitalism by any definition. And so they're operating from that time frame. And so they're looking at like injustices from their perspective in that generation. And that means that they see issues in terms of race in America. They see issues in terms of gender and sex in America. All those things come to the forefront as a result of that disparity, because you can only tell disparities within your own lifetime, not outside of that. You're only imagining disparities outside of that. So at the end of the day, you're just going to continue to see a bluing, at least for most of us in terms of our values. And people will tell you that, the young are Democrats and the old are Republicans, and that might be true, but that doesn't change really the overall way that people vote necessarily.
So do you think, my opinion is the media perpetuates those things you just said, that the millennials see, even if they aren't millennials doing the reporting, because it does help with ratings. It's racism and gender, and now we have gender inequality but I look at it and go, oh my God, are you kidding me? We had a black president. We got Ben Carson. I backed him during the election. You kidding? Last I checked, he was African American. Yeah. There are so many important. One of the most respected persons I have in my life is Herman Cain. That dude showed that's the American prosperity. I'm Mexican. My grandfather came in to show that there's still that racism out there.
That's the thing.
I don't really see that.
You're comparing it to the degree that you're aware of, and I agree with you. I mean, and nominatively, I agree with you, meaning that, like, I was born 1977.
Okay. So you're close. I'm not going to say I'm only like 22. But yeah, no, I get. I just, if it's something to perpetuate, if it's something they believe in, and I hear what you're saying, then okay, well, that's hard to change their belief, because I get what you're saying. That's what they know. That's what they've. But if you're my age and you're utilizing it, and you're throwing salt on it, or you're just throwing gas on the fire just to keep it going because it's for ratings, I got a problem with that. That's wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, I'm not going to get too much from my perspective into the kind of racial and sexual divides.
Don't get into that. I think it's just on the media side. What you see in that is divides. There is inequality with There's inequality with short people and tall people. There's inequality with somebody who's colorblind and somebody who's not. I mean, we can get inequality all day on everything, but I'm still getting, but don't worry about that. I'm just talking about the media side.
One of the things that I notice that millennials do very frequently is they conflate equality, like based on constitutional principles, and actual equality. And what actual equality smells like to me is communism. No.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, we're in agreement there. No, communism, right. Not good, bad.
I can show you like the fifth most recommended or required reading in colleges today. The fifth most per open syllabus is the Communist Manifesto. I think it's 5 or 6.
Wow.
Not the Constitution, not John Stuart Mill's on utilitarianism, not Leviathan.
Yeah.
None of those. Nope. Sorry.
Is that reason? And I went to grad school. I didn't ever have to read the Communist Manifesto in any of my college years at all. But is that again? That was years ago. So, and we're not going to say how old I am. So you just got to guess. But is that
you said how old you were in the last episode?
No, I didn't. I lied. Shut up, Ian. Shut your mouth. Shut your horse mouth over there and just be quiet. No, but is that? I guess I'm asking. Is that as a recent? I'm asking because I don't know. Is that recent that's, or has that been over the last 10, 15 years? Which to me, that's recent. That is, or has that always been done? And I just went to substandard colleges and didn't get the education.
I think so. There's a couple things that is a good question. I don't have a good answer for that because it's not based on a timeline. I'm happy to send you the site. It's a universe.
Yeah, that'd be great, bro.
The 100 top text assigned via Open Syllabus, which is a website in itself, so you can see what teachers are assigning. Mind you, Open Syllabus, it's college level reading. You're supposed to do some critical thinking. And I don't have a problem with anybody reading, Das Kapital or the Communist Manifesto as it may be. I think it should be required reading just as much as the Constitution and just as much as anything else. But when I see 4 reference books in the top 4, top ones, like the Bedford Handbook for Writers and a couple others, then there are at least 2, and I think those were pertinent American government. And then, 5th is the Communist Manifesto. I just have to get a little worried. And to be clear, nobody has such a deep-seated hatred of communism as Americans used to have. And I still kind of do. I hate communists. I've lived in socialist democracies my entire life. And those two are not the same. But I have seen the wages of sin, per se, that socialist democracies have enacted upon their own population. So I'm very familiar with how this all works. Across the board, when I was in high school, growing up in Central America, I had friends who were ardently communist, and White Russian and Red Russian Trotskyists and Marxists, and there were some of them were anarchists, whatever you want to talk about. And they're from my perspective, I hate that crap. I really just hate it. I hate collectivism. I hate the fact that you're going to force me to make a decision as a result of all the decisions that you made. Now you want to impose it upon me. And I don't honestly, and this is going to sound really bad, but my formative movie watching moment when I was a kid about America was Far and Away.
That's not bad.
It's terrible. It's a romance movie.
We all have our soft side. I had Harlequin romances. I read those in my mom's shelves all the time when I was growing up. I think it was for other reasons, though. I mean, I was starting to feel a little tingle in my loins when I read them. So I was, but they still were Harlequin romances. And lace was a big one. That's where I started to learn about things that I didn't know I had about my special purpose.
I think you're going to get some kind of ration of poop for that.
Okay, if you ever seen the movie The Producers, ever seen them with Nathan Hale and Matthew Broderick, and it's a. Okay, guys, I'll double that. That's one of my favorite movies. I just watched it yesterday. So there you go. I got The Producers, and it is people. The man world. It will. If you're a man and you watch it, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, Tana, what's wrong with that? So there. So we're good. We're on the same page, man. I'm with you, man.
It's the reason though, like, and far and away, I don't know if anybody remembers it or not, but at the end, I mean, it deals with basically a poor potato farmer's son who falls in love with basically an aristocratic redheaded who's Nicole Kidman at the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember.
So she's like this rich girl who goes over to America. I forget what her rationale or what the reason was. I think this is just like, hey, this is like we're done with Ireland. Ha, we're going over the States. So he actually has to like scrabble together, ride the ship illicitly, and she gets there and she hates it because it's a bunch of immigrants who are basically poor or impoverished, and she's living in a tenement. And he's like, "This is amazing! I can do anything I want." And at the very end, like the way that he solidifies everything that he ever sought was like that American dream, which is he goes riding out to the west and stakes a flag, and now he's got land. And when he went out there, the American government wasn't really out there. There was no government. It was just like Americans. And like the spirit of freedom from an American standpoint, at least historically, the way that I see it comes from the individuality that we have and the respect that we have for others also being individual, and the distrust of our government because they always want to get in our crap. Like, and all of that's manifest and far and away. So that was like this thing that I watched. And like I was 16, I was like, that's amazing, growing up abroad. And at some point in my life, I had a decision to make between citizenship A and citizenship in the United States. And I was like, well, I'm going to go with the United States because, far and away.
There's just not as much land anymore because everybody's developing on it. But to me, it's still, I think still people feel the same, and I still feel the same way. This is the cliche land of opportunity, but it is, man. That's why my grandfather came over and he became a farmer. Hey, farmer, there you go. And it was potatoes. Look at that. So, but if it wasn't for him coming in wanting something better here, and I wouldn't be here. I would have been raised in Mexico, I getting back to with all the bad things. I know we've been talking, worried about bad this and that. In the end, man, this is still a great country. This is why you're here. That's why I'm here. And no matter how bad it gets, there's still that opportunity out there. And as far as the wars and stuff you're talking, I know people. If there ever has to be a war in America again, if it happens, it's going to happen. It does, but it's because we're losing that feel of opportunity. If we lose the ability to go out there and be able to become something that we start, then guess what? Tana will be warring, and you don't want me warring. You don't want guys like me warring because you're going to lose. Whoever's coming, you're going to lose.
Americans are hugely self-deprecating. I mean, they're self-deprecating. It's amazing. And I've been asked that a number of times by friends who are outside. Why do Americans just hate on themselves all the time? I don't really know. But it's true. They're very self-deprecating. People talk about the ugly American, but some of that is, the boastful, arrogant attitude that sometimes you find with Americans abroad. But
East Coasters, right? I'm just reflecting back. The elitist East Coasters. Sorry, Ian. You arrogant asshole, Ian.
But the other part is like they always ask me, why do you guys make fun of yourself so much? And I'm like, that's just part of the humor. I mean, this is a way to offset awkward situations for Americans. It's very self-deprecating. And you see that reading, writing, and hearing, this is the end of America. Even if we had a civil war, I'm not sure America would be over.
No. Oh, no. It'd be like a phoenix again.
Yeah.
It really would.
The nation and there's a war in our soil. Don't think that's the end of America either. I don't think any of those things are the end of America. In the worst sense, or in the best sense of the word, Americans are like cockroaches in the sense that it's never going to happen. Because there's such an amazing amount of mixture of cultures here that was part of what its design moving forward is about. And so at the end of the day, what disturbs me right now is the only thing that could destroy that, in my opinion, is the advent of collectivism, and horrifying collectivism, authoritarian collectivism, and it's something that I don't think we didn't get this far to be like, hey, you know what? I really want a Politburo. Why don't we get a Politburo? That seems like a good idea. It's like a bad idea, but I see an amazing amount. From the euphemistic use of things like last stage capitalism, or capitalism is dead, or whatever. And I see this in writing. It was recently one of the ones that came up was Umar Haque, who writes at Medium. And if you just look at a list of the things that he writes, he is basically a giant propagandist for the end of both the UK and the United States. And one has to question why you are such a Chicken Little, basically, for those kinds of things, whilst living in the same country. I mean, what is it that you to gain from that, if anything? And elucidate, really. Like, who are you telling that this is going to happen, and who do you expect to believe you?
But there's people that, I mean, he sells it, and that's what's, it's so ironic. Again, you're saying all this, but in the end, and then you're making a ton of money by being a capitalist. That just doesn't make it. That makes no sense. Look at other people. Why are you listening to this person about? We need to share everything, except I don't. Just keep buying my books, keep buying my stuff, so I can be a gazillionaire and drive a Ferrari. But America's bad. Capitalism is bad. It's like, come on, man. I just don't get how people can buy. I get reading it, but then in the end, where people actually, you're right, just totally immersed in this. Communism, socialism, capitalism's awful.
It's huge.
Here's more of my money. Here's more of my money. Here.
You're gonna see you can see remember Ozymandias and the Watchmen? Yeah, right. Yes. So Ozymandias was funny because he would watch in television and media as things propaganda, and so you would see certain cultural shifts, which you can kind of see to some extent. He would see cultural shifts and say, hey, we're going to war in 4 years based on the fact that we're seeing like a drive in action movies or historical war documentaries, etc. And you can see the amount of media and fiction being shuttled out to the American citizenry that are all about things like, hey, socialism is cool, so is communism. Hey, collectivism is pretty cool. The most recent example is they just produced an animated film, and I read the actual comic called Red Sun, which is a spin on Superman.
Oh, I haven't read it. No, I'm a big comic book guy. Guys, everybody, if you haven't read the best comic out there, a graphic novel, Watchmen is what we're talking about first. Yes. Ozymandias. Go watch this. The movie's great. I'm more like Rorschach. That's who I represent. I think more than anybody. But that would be me. I would like to say, was it Nightwing or Night Owl? But I'm not. I have to admit, I'm more like Rorschach. But I create Watchmen. Keep going, because Watchmen is a perfect example of that, and it's actually has some scary truths to it. Yeah,
and the series on HBO is actually really good as well. I don't know crap about HBO. I'm not trying to pitch them here, but I do like the series, and
I haven't seen it yet. I'll have to watch it, man. I just don't want to ruin the movie. I'm afraid they're going to ruin the movie.
They're actually more deference to the comic rather than the movie, which maybe most people don't know, but there was a major shift at the end where and I think they made Dr. Manhattan the primary cause of a massive genocide versus what happens in the comic, which is a giant squid.
Giant squid alien. Yeah, but up to that point, it was actually pretty. I read the graphic. I'm a big graphic novel reader, but no, that goes back to what we're talking about, where people are getting used, and propaganda again is being used even in smaller doses, or with just commercials, or as unconventional warfare. We're coming back to the special forces, special ops plan of overthrowing your country without having to overthrow a country. It's just coming back to the art of war. The best way to win a war is to not even fight the war. Is to just you're not going to lose anybody. It's back to it, man. We're back into it, and people are buying into it. Wake up, everybody! Turn off the news. Listen to Battleline Podcast, and you'll be good to go. That's all you got to do. I'm using the example of Red Sun, but I mean, you can see this as a shift. Just going, if you just go back to 2010, you'll see a kind of shift in the programming then to the programming now. Again, I'm one to vilify collectivism and specifically communism, and even to some degree socialism. And my mother is a socialist Democrat. She'll proudly declare that all day. I'm a democratic socialist because she's German, and Germans like that crap. Okay. Right. So, and I've got and you see that movement here. And to be clear, I'm not equating both of them to be the same, because they're not. But democratic socialists are directly derived from stages
of moving toward communism that Marx outlined. So his expectation was that at some point everybody was going to be a democratic socialist, with the final stage of this being communism and possibly anarchy. So I do think that you see a lot of this. I do think that there's actually a lot of folks in the government who are seeking a very hyper-collective kind of society of their own vision, whether it's communism or whether it's something else. It could be anarchy for all I know. And I think that there is actually kind of a global effort, and there are some very luminary speakers that are driving what is basically neo-communism. It's a form of communism not dictated by geography. And not one of them will ever sit down and say, I'm a communist. Most of them will like most communists, say that they're socialists. Yeah. Until you get them in the power, and then it all changes. I can't explain how much I see this everywhere, where principles that I was educated in are basically adopted and then introduced and normalized, and then suddenly it's like, whoa! Like I can't necessarily brief that China is communist because the United States defeated communism. But it's like everything else. It gets repackaged, rebranded, and presented as. But that when you win a war, whenever you beat somebody, your enemy, if they don't fully sign that treaty and say none of them even fully do it, if they don't, they're going to find a new way to beat you. And that's it's as simple as that. Even a simple grunts, us infantry guys know that. You beat somebody, all right, if you don't fully defeat them, all right, they may not come at you at the same thing they did the first time. If they're smart, because they're going to lose again, they'll find another way. Here, what's our another route? How can we flank them? How can we do a little ruse? And that's what's going on.
No, very true, man. Chris, very true. And I was just going to say, because we do have to wrap up here.
Son of a! Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we're running out of time here.
Fun, man. I was like, I'll tell you, I thought these things were 2 hours in. Are you sure?
Yeah, flies by. Look at the clock, man. I know it's true.
Keep going.
You were reluctant on that, but no, it's so. What I was just going to say, I guess, kind of wrapping things up here, is the interesting thing is now you have someone like Mike Bloomberg running for president, openly saying China is not communist. And it is a pretty scary proposition. I know that there's a lot of anger over things that Trump says on Twitter and all that, and I'm kind of with you, in that I'm not the biggest fan of the guy, but I will take him over someone openly endorsing communism.
I will all day.
Yes.
I would say to Trump, just do your job, get off Twitter. Get the economy where it needs to. Just do your job. That's it. You're good.
Yeah,
you're doing great. Do your job. But I think the narcissist comes in. Loves feeding it. Just loves feeding it.
Oh yeah. So with that, dude, we're running out of time here. So I don't know if there's any last words you want to give us. We will definitely do a part 2 because I agree with Chris. This flew by.
Sure did. Well, look, to answer your question, like what's going to happen in the election? Trump's probably going to get reelected.
Oh yes,
I agree. I put money on that too.
And the reason he's going to get elected is for some of the reasons you guys pointed out. The alternatives right now, and I'm talking about the alternatives because they're like 30 of them or something, or 15. All of them are heavily advocating for some things that I actually think the unspoken majority does not want. And as a result, you're going to see Trump get elected. And no, that is not my pick, actually. So
yeah. Well, with that, we didn't even get into YouTube, which maybe we'll save that for next time because I know you wrote a status recently about YouTube is taking down content with anything involving hacking, anything involving firearms, and that was supposed to be a haven of free speech. And what they did is they waited until we were all on there, and we were like, "Oh, we love this platform," and then they're like, "No, we're going to change the rules on you now. We're no longer a haven for free speech."
We do need to get in that. So us gun guys don't have to go on Pornhub for guns, right? All you gun guys. That's why you get on Pornhub, to look at the guns. Don't tell your wives that. I know you guys are lying.
There's a site somebody recommended to me. I think it was called Float Plane. I think it's called Float. Yeah.
I'll have to look at that. I don't know what that is. Do I want to?
Yeah, I think it's called Floatplane. Floatplane looks to be, they say they don't want to be another YouTube platform, but they seem to be less discriminatory. But I mean, we should definitely talk about that. We should talk about entrenched interests in terms of like our entrenched interest when it comes to YouTube. And then when we talk about that, freedom.
Love it.
Freedom.
Heck yeah.
If you guys want to come on again, I mean, I don't know.
We
Awesome,
will have
man.
you on again. Believe me, Ian's the boss. Ian's the boss. I'm just a monkey on the string over here. Ian's the actual
That's what I
brain
say.
operation.
That's my line.
Oh, sorry. I try that again. Hey, edit that out. Go ahead. You go ahead and say it.
I'm just the monkey here, Chris. I'm just the monkey here because of
All right. I'm the taco then on the sides. Oh, is that racist? Sorry, guys. I'm Mexican though. I can say that. So leave me alone.
Thanks,
Don't
man.
hate
No,
me.
thanks for coming on again, bro. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
So awesome show there. I want to once again wrap up with this. Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. And that's right. We are no longer, we're not going to be an outlet that isn't going to have, gun manufacturers on here. We don't care what YouTube is doing. So as long as we're still allowed to advertise for Fort Scott, we will be. But this ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, as well as directly online through www.fortscottmunitions.com, FortScottmunitions.com. Use the exclusive promo code Battleline, one word, for 15% off your order. It helps us out, and they're helping us do our thing. So this is only available to listeners of the Battleline Podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud sponsor and supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. Once again, FortScottMunitions.com, promo code Battleline for 15% off. We stand by them, and I should mention, with platforms like YouTube, getting rid of gun manufacturers, getting rid of all this, we're proud to have people like this on board with us that we trust and, we have a good relationship with.
And I can tell you from personal experience, for all you people that don't know the gun community, don't believe the stereotypes. Don't believe any of these gun people that have ammunition. People at Fort Scott Munitions, they're top notch, good people, honor and integrity, and that is fleeting in today's society. So having a corporation that's family run like theirs that does a good product, but then on the inside, and you see the inner workings, is just a company that has complete integrity. You can't find somebody better than that. And if you're not using Fort Scott Munitions, you need to at least go pick up some in the military and law enforcement. If you're not using their stuff, which is what they really need to get into, you're really selling your guys short. It's the stuff that guys that need to come home every night, men and women, they need to have in their systems. And for home defense, I would recommend it highly, especially most home defense guns are 9 millimeters. Please, grab it. But then also, like we say, everything else, use your gun responsibly, just like drinking. Use it responsibly, be well trained with it. But if you're going to use it, have something in there that you can defend yourself with and that could end a confrontation immediately. And for hunters, it's a no-brainer. Go pick it up. Go pick up their rifle ammunition.
Well said, man. And this is a great last-minute Christmas gift. So FortScottMunitions.com, promo code Battleline. Any questions for the show, email battlelinepodcast@gmail.com. We'll get to those questions. And I told you Coriolanus was going to be a great guest. And, I mean, it really flew by. So...
Yeah, great, dude, and we'll get him on again, and it's to me, the little things that you can just tie into everyday life, how you can associate and just utilize common sense to see through the veil, especially when people that you may emulate and even me included. Yeah, saying people emulate me, you don't want to. I'm a jackass, guys. Believe me, you don't. I'm just a knucklehead, but as long as you use common sense, you can always make a good decision. And I don't think a lot of people do that nowadays. They like the fast food, the self-service, the quick service, the sound bites, and that's how they base their decisions. So having a guy like Coriolanus on, did I say it right? Because I always said it wrong.
Coriolanus, yeah. I want to say his real name because it's so silly, but yeah.
I like Coriolanus. Having guys like him on.
It's Coriolanus.
You're still on? I thought Spencer disconnected.
Oh no, he's right here. I got him right here. I'm looking at him.
That's hilarious.
I was going to say Coriolanus, but I knew you'd hear me. I just didn't want to go that way.
That's hilarious. He was there the whole time. Wow.
Having guys like that on just it opens up your mind. Whether you agree with it or not, it makes you think. Free thinking. He mentioned it one time. We're missing a lot of free and critical thinking nowadays too, because we like the sound bites. We love that, and that helps you think. Whether you agree with me, agree with him, agree with Ian, don't agree with any of us, if it helps you think a little bit, dig a little deeper and research, then we're doing our jobs. Then I think we're doing a good thing.
Yeah, and I think the way that you wrap that up, that, regardless of all the stuff you see in the media, America is still a great country. We are not collapsing. I think that's a great way to end this show. And we are going to get kicked out of Gotham any second now. So I will say, great speaking with both you guys, and we'll do a part 2 soon.
Tell everybody Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas coming up.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
That's all for this week's Battleline Podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk, so make sure you're subscribed. And keep up with the show 24/7 on Facebook and Instagram at Battleline Podcast. Also on Twitter at Battleline Pod. As always, never quit.